Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm David Duarte, your host, and whether you're joining live, catching a rebroadcast, or listening to a replay, you are what brings this community to life. At Music for All and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. And none of this happens without support, and we're incredibly grateful to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor, for helping us bring this mission to life. Now, just a quick reminder, we go live on Sundays, and if you're here now, we are live, and it is Sunday. But if you want to catch the show live, head to Music for All Facebook page and check the events tab every Saturday to see what's coming up. You can also watch and join the conversation using the YouTube link on our show page. Whether you watch live, you can jump into the comments on either platform. Say hello, ask a question, and share your thoughts with us. After the live broadcast, audio-only episodes are released every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other major platforms. So no matter what, for audio or video, you can find all of our episodes at musicforall.org/podcasts. All right, let's get on to the show. This is going to be a great one. Please welcome Jarrett Lipman, Director of Bands at Vandegrift High School in Austin, Texas, and the brass caption manager for the Boston Crusaders. Isn't that amazing? Today, he leads one of the country's premier band programs, shaping a culture of excellence and inspiring students every day. Before Vandegrift, he spent 15 years building the Claudia Taylor Lady Bird Johnson Band into a nationally recognized powerhouse. This is culture from the word go, and I can't wait to learn from someone who does it so naturally. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Jarrett Lipman.
Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Now, I always tell people it's kind of the reverse. I am so thankful that anyone agrees to come on the show, mainly because I feel like I am getting the biggest benefit for the show. So, like I said, this is the show about culture. We all have what we do. And, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into what your culture means to us.
Sure. Well, as the ticker says, I am the director of bands at Vandegrift High School. It's here in Austin, Texas. And before that, I was at Claudia Taylor Johnson in San Antonio. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I actually moved down to Texas for the opportunity to student teach at Ronald Reagan, which is the sister school for Claudia Taylor. And I love the community so much. I love the area so much that I ended up staying in helping to open up Johnson and to build it. And I work also in the summers as the brass caption manager at the Boston Crusaders. I love teaching drum corps. It's one of my greatest passions, and I love the activity so much. And I've been at Boston since 2017. And prior to that, I was at the Cadets Drum Corps, which was another incredible organization that shaped my life. And when I was a marching member, I was the drum major of the Crossmen Drum Corps. So it's kind of a cool thing. I ended up in Texas with the Crossmen the first year that they moved down here. They were originally based out of New Jersey and Philadelphia and Allentown, Pennsylvania. And then kind of like a sports team, the Corps made a big move, and I followed it down. And so my whole world sort of shifted to Texas, and I've been here since 2006, 2007. And I just love being in this area.
Well, you're kind of at a semi-familiar band program to many and all of us. So, so that's kind of like where my curiosity goes. So first off, like you said, you built a powerhouse at Lady Bird. And so what was it like shifting to Vandegrift, who's already a powerhouse? I've watched their Midwest performance many times. I've watched the marching band performances, throughout the years many times, and so that's kind of a neat story of going from New Jersey to Texas. And so what's it like to take over something so amazing and then just keep it going?
It's pretty incredible experience. I would say the thing that I think makes Vandegrift and Claudia Taylor pretty cool is both the schools opened around the same time, 2008 and 2009. We actually shared a lot of common staff members, design team folks, and the programs. We really built our cultures around the same ideas of trying to build great human beings first, and then concentrating on excellence in pretty much everything, whether it was music or it was marching, visual. We wanted our band members and our color guard and our vision dancers to just be great human beings, to be great in the classroom, to be great on their instruments, and hopefully provide them with life skills that we're going to carry them into the next chapter of whatever it was they were going to do. So coming to Vandegrift in so many ways, it feels like a second home. I feel like I know so many of the systems and the processes and the people that help put those into place, and the former directors and a lot of the teachers that are a part of the program are also great friends and continue to help both mentoring me and guiding me and supporting me through this. So it's been a pretty unique journey to be a part of two programs that have charted their own courses, I guess you can say, but also have so many similarities, and that's made it a pretty, as far as it goes, I would dare say, an easy transition. I love my time at Johnson. It shaped who I am, and I didn't leave Johnson to go directly to Vandegrift. I'd taken some time off in between to finish some graduate school work, start some new coursework, and then the opportunity at Vandegrift opened up. And I tell the students all the time, I was really only interested in that program because of how similar it was to the Johnson program, in that there was really an emphasis on excellence as humans and musicians over competition. Both the programs have been very successful competitively, but I think if you talk to the staffs, you would find there was a lot more to it than just trying to place first at a band contest. So it's been really special to be in a new family, and I feel challenged and I guess humbled because of the opportunity to lead and to serve a new community.
Yeah, and I always say this too, because there's the first year, like, we were talking earlier, I'm on tomorrow is day 2 of my school year, of my new school. And so
Absolutely.
Like from the word go, I'm using this show lately as like, I'm going back and watching old episodes mainly for the culture of that we talked about, because it's one thing to have been there for a day. It's another thing to have been there for a year. But now that, if you've been somewhere for a couple of years, it starts to become your own. But, like you said, you inherited something so amazing. What have you learned from it, and what have you added to it? Let's go from that route.
I think when I met the students for the first time, I promised them, that I would spend the first year really learning and listening and watching and observing. And that doesn't mean that I don't have strong opinions or thoughts or ideas on how to make something great. But I really didn't join the Vandegrift community to make Vandegrift into Claudia Taylor. Claudia Taylor is really special. It's its own vibrant, thriving community. It's a beautiful team, and Vandegrift is too. And so most of my first year, I leaned a lot on the assistant directors, who were incredible. The staff was incredible. The parents, just trying to learn. I asked a lot of questions, and I felt like I learned so much about what makes them tick and what things they value. I learned a lot about the processes that I think work really well. And I also learned about some of the things that going into year 2, you make those little mental notes along the way that you think you can build on them, or you think you can improve upon them. So much of what I spent the first year doing was learning. And then this year has been about making those little adjustments and trying to add some of my own ideas and boost up what is just an incredible, it's not only the band program, there's just so much at Vandegrift that is thriving. The program just won the UIL Lone Star Cup in 6A, is honoring the football team, the soccer team, baseball, the swim teams, volleyball. I mean, you name it. And these kids are really special, and the community is very fortunate to have the resources to be able to support so many different things at a high level. And so I try to add a little bit where I can, and mostly try to infuse a lot of positive energy, because it's a high pressure environment, and I came from a high pressure environment, and Boston Crusaders is a high pressure environment. And sometimes I feel like my job is to remind people that it's also supposed to be a lot of fun, and that's why I'm still teaching, and that's why we do this, because it is supposed to bring a lot of joy and something that we can enjoy together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because it was funny, because I always talk to students, and again, this is coming from this new fresh perspective of new students is how do you define fun? I like asking that question every year for like the first few years, because it's different. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was talking about, when I transitioned from one school to the other, when I went to Deer Valley, I remember, I will say it out, my brain was on competition, was on, doing all the things that a band director says. And I said something as simple as, yeah, we're going to be doing scale assessments, thinking nothing of it. I had 2 kids go to the office and drop band that day, and they were horn players. And that was like one of those moments I realized, oh my gosh, I really need to start thinking through the lens of where I'm at and not, what I expect. And that actually helped frame me moving forward. That was like almost 30 years ago, but I will never forget just those little tiny things that you do on those first days. But, thinking about that, how do you define fun? What does Jarrett Lipman define as fun? What's your version of fun?
It's tough. I think if you had talked to me 10 years ago, I probably would have said it's fun to be good. I think I put a lot of emphasis on being great at playing and being great at marching. And if students were great at what they did, then they were going to have a good time with it. And I think I've learned over the long term of being around great organizations and trying to build them that being good is not always fun. And so I have reflected a lot on what that means. And I think, when you place so much emphasis only on excellence at your craft, you lose sight of sometimes it's fun to kick back a little bit and to play in the stands of football games. And sometimes the fun is the journey of having it not be perfect and watching a student grow and become someone that they didn't think they could be. And sometimes I tell kids I joined band and I stayed in band because I loved bus rides to competitions and listening to music with my friends. So I think, for me, fun is being a part of an organization that gives kids and adults a place to belong. And of course, I love being around organizations that are driven to be excellent. But I also know that that balance, that the process and the journey have to be enjoyable. It's not going to be great every day. We know that sometimes it's hard, but the bigger picture of it is there has to be something that keeps kids coming back every day. And I can tell you that chasing after championships for me wasn't enough to keep me coming back every day. It was part of why I took a break. So I've reflected a lot on that joy in making music or being a part of a team or being around an organization with smart individuals. And I hope that the kids find a lot of joy in a lot of different things that I'm trying to do in this second chapter of teaching.
Yeah, it goes back to episode 2 when I had Scott Lang on, and he just caught me. I know he just kind of took over the show on me, which by the way was great. But he hit me on the, what do you value more, David, growth or performance? And I had to I know it was like it was actually my
hard.
first show. Yeah, no, that is like the worst, the worst conversation to have on your very first podcast. What do you value? And it's like, I value growth, but I get scored on performance. And it took me a while to put those things in my brain to say it the right way. And so, you coming from 2 amazing programs, growth and performance are probably different. If you went from say rural Texas or rural New Jersey to rural Texas, growth and performance would have probably a different vibe. But, is there any commonalities in the 2 programs that you've led in terms of growth and performance besides excellence?
Of course, I think the teaching staffs and the cluster, not just at the high school, but the middle school level, I think if you talk to all of them, if they could only pick one, they would pick growth. They would pick the idea of students achieving and doing things that they didn't believe would be possible. And I think you can also argue that if you stay focused on that growth, that it's going to lead to excellence in performance. And so many of the teachers and people that are going to be on your podcast, we're going to separate the world of drum corps, where I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on the product. I think students pay, $6,000-$7,000, not including what they spend on travel. These are $1 million operations plus, that are expected to deliver these championship level products. And so I don't know that I think that drum corps and music education or scholastic music education are necessarily connected. I think, the growth is important in drum corps, but there's so much more emphasis on performance and achievement because of the nature of the activity. But I think that's what's beautiful about high school band is it's somebody, or high school fine arts. It's something that every kid can be a part of. And I think the growth element is between Claudia Taylor and Vandegrift, these are two programs that the communities are super supportive, the districts are super supportive, the superintendents, the principals, the band parent organizations are wired to focus on their students having a terrific experience. But it's harder to replicate that when all of those ingredients aren't in place. And so I'm very sensitive to the fact that if you can, as a teacher, just stay focused on improving your process and your product and helping your students grow into the people and the musicians that they can, for me, that's always going to be a winning formula.
I was thinking, how do you get students to value both? How do you get what's your advice to a teacher to say, how do you get students to value that growth, or like take where you are and value some of that growth? Because I think you hit it on the head, because, you could have, hey, we were already first place in this, that, and the other thing. And as a teacher, we still need to do better every single time we walk onto that field, every single time we go onto that stage. Anytime we do that, I am such a growth mindset person that I almost kind of forget about what the result of the performance is. But it's kind of like that weird thing. I almost think of it this way, is like the performance is the expectation. It's the growth that we value.
I learn a lot watching our football coach, Drew Sanders, who's just been one of my probably closest ally since I've gotten to Vandegrift. He's just an incredible human. He opened the school, and his football teams have always been, extremely successful, extremely competitive. And these are great Friday Night Lights football. And last year, the school won its first 6A state championship title, and watching him navigate that, and obviously the celebrations that followed, and we were a part of that. And it was just wonderful. Move into this season. It's like, okay, now what? What do you do to top that? Where do you go from there? And Drew is so rational. It's like, we just got to do more. We got to do more of the things that make us successful. And he's not talking about more winning. He's talking about more discipline, more double down, more self-reflection, more excellence as people, more conditioning. I think that's something as band directors we relate to. It's whether we achieve a result that we desire or not, we're going to find success in going back to the things that we emphasize and teach our students and trying to be better at those. So it's, if it's more discipline with practicing, or maybe it's more structure, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we were a little too disciplined and structured, and we need to concentrate on letting kids be kids a little bit more, and focusing on better balance for the staff, and I think that's a big piece of what great organizations do is they look at the season, and whether or not they achieve the goals that they set out to or not, they go back and they keep going back to see what they need to do more, better, or maybe less better. And that I watched Drew, and I think he's navigating that pressure. So everybody talks about, how do you, I took over the program, and they said, well, this program just won 2 state championships. Where do you go from there? And it's like, well, I could tell you that we still need to work on pitch and intonation, and we still need to work on marching better. And so the nuts and bolts. And I said, but the other thing is that the health of the organization, the strain that comes on these young students of feeling that pressure, because they feel it too, and how do we keep them healthy, and how do we keep them excited about coming back to band every day, and making sure that what we're emphasizing is in their best interests in the bigger picture of life.
Yeah, Matthew Arrow the other day, said, I get to teach, and I've been thinking about this a lot, about what I get to do every day, and that's kind of been a helpful, a big focus for me lately. I get to go to work today. I get to teach. I've just using semantics has been super helpful, and trying to get the kids to wrap their heads around that semantics is super helpful. I've heard that football is pretty big in Texas. I don't have any firsthand experience. I'm kidding, but I was thinking that. How do you keep the drive in your programs alive? What are, here we are in basically a new year. What are some things that you have, any tips and tricks or anything that you do? Do you have any purposeful things that you do?
I think the first thing is understanding what are the things that you enjoy doing as a teacher. I think if as a teacher we stay motivated and we stay excited, we're going to be at our best for our students. And if you're fortunate to be in a situation where you have assistant directors, I know a lot of places, that's just not the way it works. It's one person for the whole program. So it's even more important to stay excited about the things that you do, because you're it. But I think it comes down to looking at the strengths of your team and trying to split up responsibility responsibilities and make sure that the staff, feels energized and motivated every day, because then we can do our best work for kids. So I always say it has to start with the staff's health, has to start with the director's health, because we are responsible for the health of the students. And then from there, it really is recognizing, that students are in band and fine arts for so many different reasons. For some kids, they're there to be professional musicians, all-staters. Others want to be teachers. But I would wager if we talk to most of them, they're not planning to be band directors or professional musicians. They're there for other reasons. So what are those other reasons? Are they there for the discipline? Are they there for the camaraderie? Do they need a place to belong? I think that's what's so amazing about fine arts is fine arts gives every kid a place to belong. It can, if the program opens its arms, and if the program allows students to be there. Maybe band is more casual in some situations, or maybe students are just there because they're not interested in competition at all. They just love playing in the stands on Friday nights. And other students, they're not great at playing their instruments at all. And so I think it's really important that the students understand that whatever they're there for, we're there for them. We value them. We want them to feel valued and know that there's a place for them. A student that has never played an instrument before, we want them to join and learn how to play that instrument. If a student, maybe, being an instrumentalist isn't their thing, but they're great with the behind the scenes stuff, like a stage crew, they run sound, or maybe it's that they're great with uniforms. Sometimes a kid is just, music may not be their passion, but people are their passion. So I think I always looked at Claudia Taylor and at Vandegrift that every kid had to contribute something. And I wanted every kid to feel like their work was valued, and that their work matters, and then finding a way to bring all of those students together under the idea of the single marching band unit, or the concert bands, or the jazz program, or chamber music. It's just offering lots of different things for students to be a part of.
How much student leadership, in terms of the fun stuff is there? Because that's, I always liked grasping ideas. My last program, I learned a lot. My students had movie nights, game nights, and I found out that those game nights were all really bonding. And so now I'm at the new school, and I haven't really got to that conversation. I have, I always tell you, I've had my hour and 15 minutes with them, and I don't know their personalities, but I'm trying to find those ways. Were there any common things that you had between your two programs? Do the students lead it? Do the adults lead it? Because you said staff and student balance, but how talk about some of those things that are behind the program that we don't see.
I think the student leadership program at Vandegrift that I inherited is incredible. The students were handed and given so many responsibilities, and they take so much ownership in the day-to-day operations. I like to think at Johnson, because we were modeling our leadership after just great programs we'd observed. Cedar Park, which split to open Vandegrift, Marcus High School, which I think had and continues to have one of the best student leadership programs in the country. And I say had because at the time I was modeling so much after them, because I felt like they were such a great balance when I was growing up of a program that was winning a lot, but also was big. And the director emphasized the right things with excellence at music, but also loving being a part of band. And so our student leadership programs between the two campuses, I think, are fairly similar. And I mean, our students are involved in everything from helping with teaching the marching to helping to tune up the band members every day. We do tuning groups and tuning circles, and we give them that responsibility. If it's UIL contest, the kids are helping to drive a lot of the warm-up process. And I think, everything from uniform quartermasters, they run the uniforms, music librarians, they photocopy the music so the kids are not coming to the staff for that. I mean, it's a big, you think about that. We have logistics managers that are in charge of everything from loading the equipment truck to helping set up and tear down for rehearsals. So I think it was trying to take all of the nuts and bolts of running the program and making those into leadership responsibilities. And a lot of that is modeled after drum corps, where the students do so much of the day-to-day running of the organization. And I don't know, kids love that stuff. They love having a task and a job, and then it's even more special for them when the organization does well because of something that they helped with.
Yeah, I believe in that wholeheartedly. And that's what I'm currently thinking right now, is how many student leader jobs are at the program I'm at, and how many are we going to develop? And, you said uniform, and that was like the first thing that popped in my head. I don't even know how the uniform process works right now. And I'm looking, and then my brain's like, what about the cleaning process? How do we turn them in? How do we check them out? What do you say to the band director out there that may be trying to do everything on their own, maybe take those first steps to gives some of the student ownership, because I know sometimes we are control freaks as band directors, and letting go is kind of hard sometimes. But what kind of advice do you have to a band director out there to like get some of the students more involved?
It's a great question. I totally get it. It's, there's always the thought process that it takes longer to teach the student how to do it than it does to do it yourself. And it's the same way I feel about parents, that the parents may not always understand, at first what has to be done. But I don't know. I think students and parents are extremely trustworthy. And if you're patient and you can give some clear tasks and instructions, then going forward in the long run, it's an investment that I think is going to make life a lot easier. I think when we try to do everything ourselves, it may seem easier in the short term, but in the long term, that's where that burnout happens, or that's where, you start to talk about not being at your best for kids because you're buckling under the stress of having to do some things. So one of the phrases that I try to live by, and it's not original. I can't remember if Dr. Tim says it. It's someone profound that I look up to so much, but it was do only the things that you can do. So it's this idea of if I'm the band director and those are the things that I'm certified and I have a specialty in, then those are the things that I should concentrate on. If another person or another student can do uniforms or photocopying or loading equipment, it isn't laziness, it's smart delegating that another person can do those things. So let them do it. But no one else can do the band thing the way that we can. So I teach, I try to teach anywhere I go where I'm mentoring or I'm helping, if that's something that someone else can do, then delegate it, because you need to do the thing that you are most gifted in, which is teach students band. And it's hard because we can be distracted and pulled so many ways, but I'm proud of the fact at Vandegrift that I feel like the staff and the students, I spend the majority of my day teaching, and I get to a place where if I feel like the extra stuff is starting to take over, then I have to delegate with it. I've got to figure out a way to break that apart. Or frankly, sometimes I just don't do it. 16, 17 years into teaching, if I think something doesn't work, I'll tell an administrator, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do that. We're going to have to figure out another system. And most people are not in a luxury where they can do that. But I would, again, push back a little bit and say, if you don't say no and you don't protect yourself, nobody else is going to. So sometimes it's okay to just say, no, I'm not going to fill that paperwork out. You're going to have to find somebody else to do that. And I think that is healthy. And I don't feel like I've ever gotten crossways with an administrator about it, although sometimes they look at me a little bit funny when I say no. And then I explain myself a little better. So I think for a teacher that is by themselves, especially, training students the first time is the hardest, but once that process is in place and you let it go, it's going to live on forever. It's as long as you let it. And the kids will mess up sometimes, but it's rare. There may be more detail oriented than we are.
Oh, that was just thinking, like, I think my nightmare process, to be honest with you, is when they pass the music back in and then putting it back together like that. And I'm a former university librarian. Like, I was the librarian that used to do that. But and I thought that would be an easy task when I became a band director. And then come to find out once, because it's like, well, I don't have time for that. I gotta go teach. I gotta do all those things. And I think you're right. And that is, how much the students can do. They are actually excelling at things that, as me as an adult, and sometimes you're right, you just have to trust. And you're right, it goes with the parents too. It just takes a little bit of training, maybe writing things out. Do you have like a handbook or policies, or are some things written down, some things just known? What's that kind of structure kind of working?
I think it's both. I think there's the 35, 40 page handbook that is a collection of things that we pulled from everybody. Vandegrift pulled from great programs, and I think we all borrow and steal from each other's websites and try to see what works. And then of course there's the rules that you add because of experiences, good and bad, and you say, oh, we got to stick that in there. But we also we have a simple like job duties. We have books of just descriptions. It's something that I added when I got to Vandegrift that I felt like in recent years at Claudia Taylor. In a Boston Crusaders, we started to just keep a log of what these jobs do, because a lot of times the student leaders apply and they don't know. So now up front, they get a 7 or 8 page book of like, this is what this job does, and here's what this job does, and there's actually timelines that go with it. And I have a head director checklist that is month by month that does all the things for the full year. We call it the perpetual calendar. That's sort of similar, that we finally started to make. And when I was leaving Claudia Taylor, I worked on it with the Mr. Lozano who took that job, and just to make sure that first year he could just look every month and see what was going to be there. Cause I think that's hard too, as a new band director doesn't always know a month at a time what's coming. So I think anything you can do to put it in writing, sometimes it's a reminder for the students, and sometimes it's a reminder for you. You learn what things have to be taken care of, and you can review those with the kids every year. But I love, that the processes are so in place at Vandegrift and at Claudia Taylor. We had done them over so many years that the kids that takes care of itself. And every once in a while we have to do a little course correcting, and we get together and revisit roles and policies and protocols and procedures. And then the kids are good to go, usually for the rest of the year.
So you know what I think? I think we need to all have our handbooks, like a mandatory national mandate. We have to mandatorily upload our handbook somewhere, and then we can all go in. Then we can all go in there and then take out the parts that work for us in our current situation. With Jarrell Horton, if you're listening, thank you, because it's the first day of my new job. I'm like, send me your handbook. Send me your handbook. I've got to think through things, because you don't know for me personally, I don't know what I know like just naturally and what's written down, because it gets to that point where I have it written down, but that might have worked for this program and then this might have disappeared. And so that's why I love looking at other people's handbooks. I love looking at other people's. I love looking at other teacher stuff. I don't think I have original thought in my head. I think I have just borrowed from every single thing, because that's what I covet, the success. I just want to know how it works for me, because what works for you may not work for me, and I have to let that go in my own little wheelhouse as well.
Of course.
But you also said something, and also, your website is popping up, by the way. I'm going to get to your website, which is jarrettlipman.com. I'm just throwing that in there. So for the listener, you have on there coaching versus clinics, and this, talking about, it is one amazing thing to watch and be a part of somebody else's classroom and some of the things that you see, and I wanted to talk about the culture of classrooms that you've gone into, because, what is that coaching like, and what are those clinics like? I would love to know the things that you offer, because I think that's partly where your culture comes from.
I think a lot about, a clinic and coaching and it's anything we do in this world. Mentorship is so key. I've stayed at the Boston Crusaders and the Cadets, one of my great friends, probably one of my best friends. And also my mentor and my teacher is Gino Cipriani. He is the brass caption head and the assistant director for the drum corps. And every summer I'm with him it's like a coaching session. He's always there to help. He watches my teaching. He listens to my vernacular, my vocabulary, and will offer suggestions or comments and, pacing on my rehearsals, how I do stuff. And it's so cool. It used to stress me out, and now I love it because I'm constantly getting feedback so I can be better. I think that's the big piece of it, that, if we can be around somebody that can help us be better for our students, that's where the clinics and the coaching come from. I've learned as much from watching somebody conduct my band. If Dr. Tim Ray comes in from A&M and he conducts the band and I'm off the podium, I just watch how he goes to work, and I learn from everything from how he conducts them to the vocabulary that he uses. And it's amazing, versus if I have a Tom Bennett or Joe Dixon, two of my other mentors that will come in, and they will actually watch me teach, and they will coach me in front of the students. So it's almost, it's hands-on. I'm doing the thing that I do every day, and then they're reacting and responding and offering suggestions. And I try to do that. I tell people, it's like, if I come to your rehearsal, I'm more than happy to be a fly on the wall and observe and meet with you after. I can also work with the band a little bit. I can interject. So it's really, a lot of times I think people that bring someone in, it's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to open up your world to someone when you're not used to it. And then there's that part of, I don't even know how it works. So I just try to eliminate some of that fear. If someone wants to bring me in and I can help, then I want to be able to do that. I add on that a lot of the places I go to now, I'm specifically concentrating on trying to help lift Title I programs, especially because it's what a lot of my research is in at UT, and kind of my passion. You realize not every student or every community has access to what the students at Vandegrift or Claudia Taylor do. So a lot of times when I'm going out, it's for the purpose of trying to help someone that's in a challenging situation. They don't have funding, or the schedule schedule doesn't work, or their beginner classes aren't positive. And we, studies and research have shown that if the director turns over, their staff turnover, that makes it that much harder on the students. So it's trying to keep those teachers in Title I campuses feeling supported and feeling nurtured and heard, and recognizing that the stuff that works in my classroom at Vandegrift or Claudia Taylor or Boston may not work there, but there are things that I can share with them. And I learn so much from them. I learn about how to take what could be perceived as a really negative situation, and I see the teachers doing incredible things, and then I learn and I go out and I try to share that to other people that may find themselves in a similar situation, because teaching in a Title I campus is a very unique and special thing. I think through coaching and through clinics or whatever you want to call them, as teachers, we can give a lot back to the community. So I don't think you have to be an expert in the field to be a great coach. I just think you have to be willing and supportive and patient, and it really can go a long way to improving someone's outlook on their situation.
Yeah, Title I, you're speaking my love language right there. Cause I think I think I have this huge passion for Title I. I think that's what I have spent my life. And I don't know where this came from, but I always feel like if you can build a band program anywhere, it does. And this is where that competition versus growth conversation started. If you start in a Title I program, you might be taking over a program that has instruments that haven't been purchased in 40 years. You might have no tubas, or you might have tubas, but none of the valves are there, or worse, there's some are missing. I think there's something to be said, and I said this to other guests. How many band directors are out there that are probably just superstars, but because they don't have that performance aspect behind them, because they're in a situation where maybe that performance, it's not that it's not possible. It's to me, it's access and equity of resources is what changes it. And so, for all those Title I schools out there, there are so many resources that I would say are probably unknown until we talk to each other as a community. So, is there anything that you have discovered? And this is why I love going into classrooms, or like, as you said, when somebody else steps on the podium, I always say, hey, I think I just heard my band for the first time. I don't think I ever heard that, standing in front of them and teaching and standing and listening to your actual band is almost two different things. But, but going back to Title I, are there any things that you've observed in in the Title I community, or like any helpful advice is what I'm starting from?
Probably one of the best places in the world that I've seen, like for band, is the Texas Rio Grande Valley, or on the border in Del Rio. And I look at the culture of excellence and the kinds of instruction that's going on. And, in the absence of maybe having, symphony players or university lesson teachers, or, you would wonder how can it thrive? And there is so much pride and purpose in the Valley, and so many programs that perform and achieve at such a high level, and they don't make excuses for things. I think the band directors in the Valley are constantly problem solving. They look at their situation and they're there to solve that puzzle, whatever it takes. And I've seen it in Del Rio. I've been going to visit Del Rio for 10 years, and they have had such a profound impact on my life when I look at the students. And I think the common ground, we say kids are kids anywhere, and I believe that with all my heart. Not all kids have access to the same resources or the same opportunities. And so I am always inspired and lifted by the teachers that are in these situations where, the chips are stacked against them, and they're still thriving. They're still lifting their students. They're still teaching at a high level. They're still, focused on growth, but they're still achieving. And it's where it's hard, to go to a band contest and put all your chips in that basket of like, this is what we're going to use to measure success, because it doesn't tell the whole story any more than a standardized test does. I think the culture in the Valley is one where students understand that we're here to be great. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this at the highest level, and we're going to have the discipline and the work ethic, and the teachers breed that kind of culture. So it goes back to the whole purpose of the broadcast, which is, what is the culture of a program? And if I'd use Aldine ISD as another example, or Fort Bend, or two districts that are pretty mixed demographics in Texas. Both of them are in Houston, but both of them are full of lots of teachers that want to be great at band and are supported by the fine arts teachers in those areas, and the superintendents that may not understand, but know that band is what brings those kids to school every day. And so for a lot of the urban schools, I find that band becomes a way to get kids in the door. And if you can get them in the door, then you can get them to graduate, and you can get them to move to another chapter of life. And those districts that understand that are out there. So I think if you're at a place maybe that doesn't understand that, it's knowing that you're not alone, and there are other places that are in difficult situations that have turned them into truly wonderful situations. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's what I'm always looking at. I'm looking at the situations that would be labeled hard, and then I'm studying and I want to learn more from those teachers. And it always goes back to the leadership. It goes back to the creativity. It goes back to the focus on the right things of growth and lifting students up and giving them a place to belong. And then, of course, the nuts and bolts of we have to learn to play in tune. If my students can't play their clarinet and they can't play their trumpet and they can't play their tuba, the best places are going to figure out how to teach clarinet and trumpet and tuba and horn, and they're going to make that happen. And that's where they don't allow the resource situation or the administration situation to get in the way of being great at teaching band and giving students something special to be a part of. Whether or not that results in a championship or a medal or a trophy is beside the point if we're really talking about excellence in music education.
Yeah, somebody said this too, and that's why you're making my brain go a mile a minute here, is, focus on where you're at, because what you do is a local thing. It's not a national thing. And I think it's okay to love all those things that great bands do. But the truth is, make your home the best possible home that it can be, and let it go from there. Let it strive from there. I was thinking too, for those listeners out there, as a former administrator, there are many accesses to Title I funding and Title I resources that you don't know about, and you have to go about your ways to do that. I know for a fact that there are grants that are only available for schools that are Title I versus not Title I, but you have to go out there and you kind of have to look for those things. Because, in my brain, the first thing I think of is, let's see, if I can't afford instruments, I'm going to start attacking mouthpieces. And if I can't attack mouthpieces, sure, I'm going to start attacking even just reeds, valve, anything that I can do to provide to give it to that next thing. Because you're right. It doesn't matter whether you're playing on this $250 clarinet or this $25,000 clarinet. Who has a $25,000 clarinet?
I would love nobody that I'm teaching
to know that for a second. But you're right. They just have to play in tune, because I can't hear the brand of a clarinet on a recording. All I hear is it in tune, and does it produce a good sound? And I think that's kind of like the ultimate thing. But, we talked about, wanting to talk about equity and access to resources, or access to even just music programs in general. I think it's something that we all, as band directors, no matter where we're at, can contribute to. And I think it's important that we do.
I think equity is a scary word right now. I think it's been turned into one. I think there's a lot that goes out there, and teachers aren't sure what they can say and what they can't say. And all I try to stay focused on is looking at the experience that my students at Vandegrift enjoy and the students at the Boston Crusaders. And when I go out, it's how to help more people have those experiences. It's nothing to do with taking anything away from the experiences my students enjoy. It's how do we get more people to enjoy a great experience in music education, because we can all agree that our lives all change because of it. And if more students could enjoy that level of life-changing experience, then I feel like that's something I'm called to try to help with. I'm not saying everybody has to, but it is a passion for me.
No, and like my notes say, equity starts with asking who's not in the room and why. And if you can start to answer the questions, you can approach the what you need to do, because it's not about giving everybody something. And I think that's the whole thing. I think semantics in this country have gone just crazy bad. We're trying to say one thing, but we mean another, or we mean something and we say another. And that's why I say equity doesn't mean what people think it means. It's really, to me, it's just driving the standard. Here's my band. I'm going to make that band as good as I can, and I'm going to look for all available resources. And the band starts with the individuals. The band is the ensemble. There's so many details that you have to address when you're building a band program, and anywhere that you build a band program, you have to have those things.
I agree.
I know. And then where do you go from? I agree. Okay, that's it. Thanks for coming. No, I'm kidding, but
no, I agree. If we could go down that rabbit hole forever. I stay focused on this idea that so often, people can just be overwhelmed by the challenges that they face. And, directors will ask me, they'll say, do you think I should apply for this job or should I leave somewhere else? And, I go back to Aldo Morales, is the head director at Del Rio. And he's talked a couple of times about wanting to go somewhere else. Maybe Del Rio is about 3 hours west of San Antonio. And it's remote. It's right on the border. And
I
there's
have
not a lot
been there.
around it. Yeah. And I think, if you were to ask him why he's talked about looking elsewhere, it's more for, to just be around other people, other programs. It's if I want to drive to go watch Vista Ridge or Rouse, or I want to see another great band, they're 10 minutes down the road, he's got to get in a car and drive 3 hours to get to even another band. And I think, what I've also been amazed at is every time that he starts to think about leaving, he comes back to why he's so passionate about staying and what he's built there and what he's done in his community. And so again, I think a lot that, every situation that you go to, and this, I don't have to tell you, is going to have some really good things and then some challenges. And it's, thinking that leaving your situation is going to result in it immediately getting better somewhere else, is a low percentage move, because you don't know what you're walking into. So I'm not an advocate of staying in a toxic environment or one that doesn't support you or the students, but I do think that the challenges that someone would have taking over a Vandegrift or at Claudia Taylor are very unique to those campuses, and the challenges someone would have taking over Del Rio or taking over a Harlingen, taking over a Fort Bend Hightower, they're all going to be unique. And it's just it's how motivated are you to help the students there become who they're capable of being, and are you in a situation where you can bring in the mentorship and you feel supported to solve those problems, because that's half the battle. Is you may know how to solve the problem, but you're not supported to do so, and figuring out how to get to a place where you can put all these great ideas to work. That's where I think the equity piece hinges on. It's just getting more information out there to people that want to be great and may not feel like they're supported to do so, or may not, as you said, they don't even know where to begin with it. And so that's, for me, what the conversation is really about.
Well, it goes back to what Scott. I'm going to drop my Scott Lang thing here. For whatever, Scott, you're getting mentioned on here so much today, but he wrote a book, Leader of the Band. I happen to be chapter 2 of that book, and the name of that chapter is called Finding Your Fit. And I will stand behind this. Sometimes you fit a program, and sometimes you don't, and that goes both directions. And I will stand behind. I would. If Vandegrift opened up, I would not be applying for that job one single bit. That is not where my fit goes to. This goes back to my brain. You said Title I, that automatically my interest goes sky high, because I think my fit is finding somewhere where I am of need. I need to find what's it's not my current status. I'm not trying to say that, but I like to solve puzzles. I like to fix things. Yeah. I like to go somewhere where there's and that's not how I have, by the way, I have never searched for a job. They have all kind of come and found their ways toward me. But then it comes back to that question: do I fit in this program? Does it need me? And it's also the reverse question: do I need this program, or does the program need me? And it has to be from that lens. So when you talk to your friend about at Del Rio, that's what I'm thinking of. You can't let I need to be around a symphony if you want to put if you want to study the symphony and be around that, you too need to be around a symphony, because that's what fits you. And the impacts that you make, you might find a situation where you could go to a program that might win, but it doesn't fit you as a human being, because your growth model or what you consider success might not match that part of the program.
Of course.
So, oh, look, we have a comment. I love comments. That's what Notes of Impact is all about. Getting more kids in ensembles where they learn necessary life skills and a community to belong to. It is important for mental health all over there. Yeah, we haven't even talked about mental health. We can go there. And by the way, thank you, Lauren McBride, for that comment. That is fantastic. Like I said, these shows always creep up on me, because I start finally getting into the topics 45 minutes in, and then I think to myself, we need like 2 or 3 other shows to decide which topic we're going to talk about. But
sure.
I guess, but going back to just the fit and that, I think it's really important that as a band director that you kind of find out what is important for you at your program and whether or not you know, that's, and determining what is success for you. I'm not sure where I'm going for that, but I'm just saying that you got me all worked up there over
I agree. And it goes back to the comment that I made about Vandegrift, and Vandegrift was such a perfect fit for me, you know, and for so many reasons. And it wasn't, you know, of course I want to be around successful organizations, but I felt like I knew the people that were there, and I knew the students, and, you know, we were on such similar paths as Johnson was. And at the time, Johnson was the greatest fit in the world for me. I couldn't imagine being in a different place at that point in my life. And the way that, you know, Reagan was splitting to open that school as I was student teaching there and meeting the kids. And I say all the time, I feel like it was a God thing. But I also go back to the importance of fit and being at a place. And fit is so many different things. You've articulated it. I felt so valued and appreciated by my principals at Claudia Taylor Johnson. I felt valued. And up until the very end, my fine arts directors were just, my work mattered, and they were there for me. They were there to celebrate. They were there when I had a hard day. And then coming into Leander, where the, you know, the fine arts director has been the former director at Vandegrift and a colleague and a friend. And so not everybody is going to be in that situation, but you can be in a situation where you feel like it is a great fit. And when it isn't a great fit, you know, is it something that's long-term, or is it something that you can weather? Can you adjust the fit? Can you make the situation better? Because if you're in a great fit, you're going to be able to do great work. And I think if you're doing great work, that's when your students really get to become a part of something that's your vision and reflective of your best teaching and what you can bring. I think a lot about my parish, my church that I belong to, and it's three words that we live by. And the first is believe, and the second is belong, and the third is become. And I, you know, believe, I think is really connected to the faith. But I think when we talk about belonging and that sense of belonging, I still drive home to my parish in San Antonio because I feel like I belong there. It's an organization I look forward to seeing every day. I feel safe. When I couldn't go there during COVID, I felt like a piece of me was cut off, just like we all did from our students and in the band hall. And so I want students to belong more than anything. I want them to feel like they're a part. And we talked about that at the beginning. And then that part about becoming who they're capable of, that's our job as teachers. Is, you know, kids don't see what they can be. We can see in them something they can't see in themselves. And if we can unlock that through band, it's life-changing for them. I mean, that's hopefully, I feel like most of us teach because a band person helped unlock something in us. But I can't say enough that's, we talk about culture. It's helping students to become what they're capable of, and that's, you know, that I think in Title I schools, it's again, those teachers, all teachers are heroes, but I think in Title I, there is a special place in heaven for them, for the things that they have to do and the challenges they face and how they uplift their students every day. I can't say enough. I'm the biggest admirer.
Well, here comes my scary question, and it's not really doesn't have an answer, but I like throwing these every once in a while. Is your band built on truth, or is your band built on belief? And I will stand behind that. The fact that belief is what gets us through everything in life, because if we don't have it, we cannot find our truth, and we don't even know if that truth is a belief. I mean, I said it. I know. Yeah. I'm going to be in this circle, but I said, you know, which is more important? I said it on the show before, which is more important, truth or belief? And I'll stand behind it. Belief is more important than anything, because the truth may never be known, and it probably cannot be known, because we're never sure of what that is. So we have to believe in what we do. Otherwise, I mean, do the students believe in you? Do you believe in the students? Because here's the other question that popped in my head. It's like, I'm in a hot take moment right now, which is, you know, if you had not made that move from Texas and done your student, or from New Jersey and done your student teaching at Ronald Reagan, would you be the person you are today? And did that decision create who you are? You know,
I mean, I go back to all the time. I turned down positions at the cadets twice. My first year and my age out year, I auditioned and I went, And I turned back both times, and I laugh. I never made finals with the Crossmen. I got there the first year the Corps fell out, and we got 2 to 3 places worse each year that I was there.
Oh.
So I should say that I loved my experience at the Crossmen. It was one of the best things in my life. I wouldn't be who I was without it. So I really do speak this idea that the competitive success, it was painful, but it wasn't my why. It wasn't the reason I was there. And I say, if it hadn't been for the Crossmen moving, I never would have made the connection with the people at Ronald Reagan or Claudia Taylor. So we just don't know in life, what's going to happen. What I believed in was the Crossmen organization, and I believed in my teachers at that time, and I believed in the Corps director my last year, Mark Chambers, who was the Reagan band director at the time, and is probably has had more of an impact on my life than my family. And I think it goes back to, again, if you connect, things to competition, you're missing out on the bigger picture. And it's to take away. I love winning band contests. Trust me, Boston just won this summer. It was one of the happiest nights of our life. But I stayed at Boston because of the people and the culture and the kids and the students. And that's what's kept me coming back every year. And it will, because Boston doesn't prioritize winning. Of course, it's always in the back of our minds. We want our kids at Boston to love Boston. We want our kids to have the summer of their life. We love teaching together. We want to be the best in the world, but we don't have to win first place to be the best in the world. The Bluecoats are the best in the world. The Blue Devils are the best in the world. Crown is the best in the world. Everyone that is in drum corps is the best in the world at what they're doing, because they're of what they're putting into it. And so I'm not a believer that we're all winners in life. I get it. There's winners, there's losers. It's the way that this works if we get super black and white about it. But the beauty about being in the band world is we can live in the gray. We don't have to live in the black and the white. We're artists. We can live in the colored worlds. And so it's just like, you don't have to box yourself into a place where, your entire world is defined by the number of medals you have hanging around your neck, because it's a great thing. I just think there's so much more out there.
Dare I say it, all the groups, and I'm talking music groups, those that go out there with that must win at all costs are not the ones that are winning those national competitions. It's when expectation to be your best creates that. I don't think anybody's goal is to win. I think everyone's goal, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, I think everyone that wants to do their best and tries and finds and keeps trying to find that are the ones that we have success. So I covet the success of a program. I don't covet the winning, and success comes in many forms. And here's the scary part. I want to keep going to this conversation, but we're already 55 and a half minutes.
I get
into
it.
This.
Yep.
I know. And
people are still listening, I'm always amazed at podcasts, because it's this long. You got to be committed.
No, I'm committed. We're both still here. So, I always like to ask people at the end of the show what their final thoughts are. And so and usually I've been changing it up here in the lately, which is I don't want to make it about culture, tell us what culture means to you. Because I think what it really comes down to is, in terms of your final thought, what is something you offer? Maybe it is about culture. Maybe it's about your program. Maybe it's about your clinicking. Maybe it's about mental health. It doesn't matter. But, to me, the final thought and the reason culture you don't go out there and go, here's what I do for culture. I don't think so. I think it's who you are drives your culture. But give us your final thought for the day. It can be anything you want it to be.
Band programs are a reflection of their leadership. Cultures are a reflection of their leadership. And I think if you want your culture to be better, it starts with examining your leadership. And that is the hardest part, because it requires a ton of self-reflection. And when my programs have been unhealthily competitive, it's because I was unhealthily competitive. When my programs were in a rut, it was because I was in a rut. When my programs were at their best and enjoying things, it was because I was recharged and at my best and enjoying things. And so it's not a narcissistic thing. It's understanding that you set the tone every day as the organization's leader. And if you don't like how things are going, you have the ability to change it. You are the person that is empowered to make your students' day every day. You have the ability to shape their lives and your staff's lives. And so I think taking care of ourselves is so important. I I think the mental health piece of it, reducing the pressure, is really not possible. I can't say there's an easy way to reduce the stress to this job. It's just what it is, but it's understanding you're not alone, and it's understanding and really internalizing the fact that you have to find the things that bring you joy every day. And it's not that every day is going to be joyful, but it's what are those little things every day that are going to be the joyful part of the day. If you're not having fun every day, that's something to work towards, because the more joyful you are, the more your culture is going to reflect that. And I hope at Vandegrift, if there's anything that I can help continue to keep going, it is a joyful culture, and it is a lot of students and parents that look forward to seeing each other every day. And that is what I entered into, and that is what I feel the most passionate about maintaining going forward more than anything else.
Well, Jarrett, that is amazing. And you are a gift to this world. I appreciate everything you had to say today. But before you go, we want to be able to share, maybe get in contact with you, share your socials. So for our listeners, his email is jarrettlipman@gmail.com. Also for our viewers, it's still the same email, but you can see it. So it's JARRETTLIPMAN@gmail.com. I believe we have some socials, the Instagram @VHS.band. Wow, that's amazing. How did you get the VHS? Like, how many VHS bands are there? And you got, I always think, when you go pick your Instagram handles, how did you get the lucky one? But @VHS.band. Follow, enjoy, learn, and and my advice to anyone is, if you ever get a chance to watch Jarrett teach or watch his band, do so. I learned from so much from watching. I learned from listening. The impact today is going to be for me is to just don't get into those details and just celebrate what you do. But thank you so much for being on the show today. You are awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, David, and everybody at Music for All. I'm grateful.
Well, thanks for spending your day with us. As we wrap it up, we'd love for you to share this podcast on your social media, because when you do, it helps more teachers find their way into the conversation, and it continues to build the kind of community where we all grow together. Remember, you can always reach me at david.duarte@me.com, and you'll find this episode along with many others at musicforall.org/podcast. So as we wrap up, thanks again to Music for All for bringing this show to life and having me on here. I love it. Thank you so much. And thanks again to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor. I'm David Duarte. Thank you so much for being a part of our culture today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.